All right, welcome into the Auburn Live Basketball Show. Appreciate everybody for joining us. I'm Justin Hokanson. With me, as always, is Mr. Alan Head. What's up, man?
What's up, buddy? How you doing tonight?
Good, man. So we normally record these in the afternoons. We're recording this at night just so people know the struggle. We're both coming in hot from putting kids down. We're like,
yes.
Go to bed. We got podcasts to record.
Yep, and somehow my 5-year-old does not put my podcast career in front of him needing to read at least 5 books before we go to bed. So
unbelievable. The gall.
Yes, that's right.
All right, we got a bunch to talk about before we do. Real quick, shout out Session Cocktail, sponsor of the Auburn Live Basketball Show, partner of auburnlive.com. Go check them out. Session Cocktail, downtown Magnolia Avenue, downtown Auburn. Great happy hour, 4 to 7. Fantastic old fashioned. They have a drink called the Monkey Business, by the way, that I'm kind of on right now. I love the old fashioned there, but I wish I even knew what was in it. But it's just really good. Just trust me. If you go in there and you want to try something that's not super sugary or sweet or whatever, Monkey Business. By the way, I went to the session in Tuscaloosa, so I covered the Alabama game and stayed the night. Went over to the session Tuscaloosa with Hunter. So Hunter Wiggins owns session Tuscaloosa, owns Auburn. He was in town, in T-Town. And so after the game, went with him. We went and checked out the Tuscaloosa location and had a drink. Oh, hilarious. Walk in the Tuscaloosa session, and there's kind of a front room. It's a little different than the Auburn one. There's a front room in the Tuscaloosa one, and then you get into the bar, similar but a little different. And I walk in, and there's a guy to the right. I won't give his name away because he's whatever. And he's like, Hoke. I go, what's up, man? He's like, Smitty J from the corner.
Get out of here.
Yeah, the Tuscaloosa session. I'm like, what's up, dude? So we had some corner members hanging out, having a drink at session in Tuscaloosa after Auburn's win. So I told Hunter, I said, see, man, you're getting people in your Tuscaloosa bar.
There you go, because of you. So that's right. They could be at Industry, but they decided to come to session. So
yeah, it was funny. So shout out to Smitty J.
There you go.
All right. Let's look back as we always do. Let's look back on a couple games, Alabama and Arkansas. Obviously, everybody knows what was on the line for the Alabama game and what that meant, and for the conference and for the programs. And I was there. What an atmosphere! It felt like what it would feel like before, a massive football game, Iron Bowl. Like not just during the game, but I mean, I'm in the Coliseum an hour and a half before. I mean, the student section completely packed an hour before. People are getting in there early, and you just, you go in a place, you just feel the energy. That's what was going on, man. Janabrim walks on the court an hour beforehand, is getting booed. They're chanting F Auburn before the game even starts. I mean, it was another level of hostility. It was a lot like the 2010. If anybody went to the 2010 Iron Bowl, it was a lot like that. Auburn was the better team. Bama was fantastic that year as well. They lost too many games that year in football. But the environment was just hostile and just hostile. And unlike that game, Auburn controlled that thing from start to finish. And then, of course, they bounced back. They have a grinded out game against an Arkansas team that's playing really well. Auburn wins that game as well. So I'll kind of open the floor to you a little bit, and you can shoot out any thoughts from Bama or Arkansas, either one of those two wins.
Sure, and we'll touch on both. But I thought you coined it perfectly when you talked about the atmosphere, because that had the feeling of just probably one of the more important games Auburn has ever played, this state has ever seen in basketball, in my honest opinion. 1 versus 2 matchup, it played out that way on the court. Obviously, Alabama didn't shoot it very well in that game. Auburn had a lot to do with that. I thought defensively it was a fantastic strategy by Stephen Pearl to run Alabama off the line and kind of force them into a wall to a degree, trying to make tough twos there in the lane over Auburn's bigs. But great strategy defensively. Hat tip to Denver Jones. I think Bruce Pearl really kind of came out in defense of Denver after that game and talked about how just unsung hero he really is for this team defensively, and how he's a significantly better player than probably he gets recognized for. And I know he did that on different platforms, and it parlayed itself into Denver being named, was it Defensive Player of the Week? Was that what it was? National Defensive Player of the Week?
Yeah, National Defensive Player of the Week, SEC Player of the Week, I think.
There you go. You had some timely buckets in that game. Probably none bigger than the series where, you talked about how Auburn controlled it, and they did. It got close there for a little bit. Alabama had tied it, and at that pivotal moment when Alabama tied it, true freshman Tahad Pettiford comes down on the right-hand side of the court on a 5-on-1 break and absolutely pulls up and drills, a three-pointer from 32 feet out. Just fearless, man. And that kind of swung it. Alabama goes back down. They hit another big three, and then Chad turns around and hits another one. And at that point, it went from 3 to 5 to 7 very quickly, and Auburn just kind of maintained control throughout from that point moving forward. But that was the tipping point of the game. And Auburn got 2 big plays from guys that they had to have it. And you think about other people that stepped up in that game. Janai got his. He was really hot early and kind of cooled down the stretch, twisted his ankle again, but still fought through the adversity and fought through the discomfort to hit some big buckets. Chaney, big night from him that night. Denver shot it better in that game than probably that whole week. Vanderbilt and Alabama, he shot it really well. But he hit 3 3-pointers in a row, banked the third. And, of course, Jeffrey claims he heard Denver call it, so it counts, right? But I just thought it was a game where Auburn stepped up and played on the level that you expect from the number 1 team in the country, and it was good to see. And that wasn't an easy thing to do, to go into Tuscaloosa in the environment that you described, Justin. I can't remember the number of teams at Auburn that I would think could play up in an environment like that. I mean, it's tough enough when you're playing a team the caliber of Alabama, but when you play in that kind of an environment that's hostile in that way, it's either going to go one or two ways, man. It's either going to go really bad or it's going to go good. And Auburn was up to the challenge. So excited to see that. And then you fast forward to Arkansas, and I felt like Auburn was just emotionally drained in that game to a degree. Didn't play as crisp a brand of basketball offensively, I think, as Bruce would have liked to have seen. But yet, when they need to, they're able to turn it on in that ending stanza there and push it out to a 7-point victory. So you have to give credit where credit is due, and the fact that Auburn did what they needed to do to get it done. I'm not going to pretend like that was the best brand of basketball Auburn has ever played. It wasn't. It wasn't terrible either, because Arkansas is a better team than their record would have you believe. If they don't have losses to LSU and probably Oklahoma, I think people are talking about Arkansas squarely as a tournament team this year. But they lost 2 cheap ones they should have had, and thus their record is not reflective of the talent on that roster, because you got at least 3 guys on that roster that are going to play in the NBA, in my honest opinion. So, again, credit to Bruce. It is not easy to win games when you're everybody's Super Bowl. To steal a line from John Calipari from a couple years back, when he was doing the whole thing about how we're coming in here and everybody gets up for Kentucky. Well, everybody gets up for Auburn now. And when you're getting everybody's best shot every night, it is difficult at times, especially when you're as emotionally spent as Auburn was coming out of that Alabama game. I mean, I think you recognize it very well and have talked about it. But when you get up that high and then you have to level back out and get back up for another game, it's not easy. I expect us to play much better against Georgia this coming Saturday. But again, massive game against Alabama, did what you had to do against Arkansas, and now it's on to continuing to try to extend your lead for an SEC championship.
Yeah, at least Bruce doesn't come out every game and go, "We're everybody's Super Bowl." Like, that's why Calipari is so annoying.
I agree.
Gives respect to the other team, and it is what it is. And when Calipari would do it, it's like, okay, man, like we got it. We're all here to see you. Everybody gets it.
Yes.
He was fun to listen. He was kind of fun to listen to after Arkansas. A little bit, same personality, but obviously gave credit to Auburn and for being the number 1. I said, look, that's why they're number 1. They closed and we didn't. And in the Arkansas game, man, they're playing better. And I think now they're 4-9 in the league, but I think 7 are single-digit losses. I think 7 of the 9 are single digits. So, I mean, like, and anybody who watched them from Kentucky on, they beat Kentucky. They turned around, went to Texas and won. They almost got blown out by Alabama, came storming back.
Yep.
So they were very clearly a different team, and they're a good defensive team. Period. They're top, they're like a top 30 defense. They're a top 40 net team. So I get the SEC record's not great, but you also got to remember there are going to be teams like Arkansas was a last four in. I mean, so disregard the fact that they were 4-8 in the league coming in. Okay.
Right.
They came in as a team projected to be in the tournament, barely, but in. So I get in the SEC this year, you got to look at Arkansas. Like look at, Auburn already beat Texas, but like Texas is projected to be in, I think maybe a 10 seed.
Yes.
The SEC is different this year. You can't just look at it and go, well, they're 4-8. Gosh, we struggle with a 4-8 team. No. That's an NCAA tournament team. The win at Texas was an NCAA tournament team. The SEC is that good, and so I think you got to adjust a little bit how you look at it. Arkansas is very good defensively, and you knew it would kind of be. I felt it. I texted somebody earlier in the day. I literally texted him. I said, "I'm real weary of this game."
Mm-hmm.
I wrote in my preview, kind of keys to the victory. I just said. I said 68. I go, if Auburn holds them 67 or under, they're going to feel good. And obviously Auburn hit 68. If Arkansas gets over 68, you got issues. I thought Auburn scored a little bit more, but I thought Auburn defensively, it was just one of those games that just didn't hit shots against Arkansas. I mean, they didn't hit a three in the second half. They had some bunch of good looks. Now Arkansas missed looks too. I would argue I'll take the looks that Tahad and Miles and Denver had versus Big Z jacking up threes. I know you're a computer, but both teams shot terrible from three.
Yes.
But at the same time, I would expect the team at home to shoot a better percentage than the team on the road. So while both teams didn't shoot well, Arkansas and Auburn, I would say that, it's more shocking that Auburn shot poorly at home versus Arkansas shooting poorly on the road, especially when you look at what Auburn's been able to do against Alabama didn't shoot well. Vanderbilt didn't shoot well. Like Auburn's been able to do pretty good against teams in terms of the 3-point line. So the Arkansas game is what it is. I go back to what I've said before, which is just, I think there's always something to build on, and there's a silver lining, and there's some optimism in a way to win games a lot of different ways. I think back to the team last year. They blew everybody up. Now, they had some losses, but remember at one point last year, there was like they had a run. It was like they led the nation in 20-point wins or 15-point wins last year. Well, what did that get you? Now, you made the run in Nashville, but it didn't get you anything. You lost to Yale. You got upset, right? So we sort of learned that doesn't necessarily mean anything. And so this team, as good as they've been, there's a bunch of close games. So, like, if you just think about it from that perspective, they won the game. That matters towards trying to hang a banner. And they found a way to win. That stuff matters in March. So, like, come March, I don't know what'll happen, but you're not going to have a more prepared team in the history of college basketball.
No.
Than what Auburn will be from the teams they played, the neutral site games, some of the away atmospheres. They still got Rupp and College Station to go. The close games. Like they're going to have been through it all. Good teams, neutral sites, away, close, down to the wire, got to make a play. Like they're just going to have been through it all. Having to come down from an Alabama game and just grind one out the next game and just find different ways to win. So I kind of look at it that way. There was nothing that happened in Arkansas that was really that was alarming. I mean, it was just to credit Arkansas. They brought the fight. I credit Auburn for matching that fight. It would have been easy for I thought when Florida brought the fight, I thought Auburn looked shell-shocked. For whatever reason, I thought Auburn looked shell-shocked, and it took them a while to find their footing. I thought when Arkansas brought the fight, I thought Auburn answered immediately. Like I thought Auburn in the first half immediately ratcheted up their intensity and their energy and their emotion to match a hungry, desperate team. I didn't think they did that at Florida until the last 12, 13 minutes. I thought they did it right away at Arkansas. I mean, Arkansas was right there, and Auburn's like, okay, we're fighting. That's what we're doing here. So I give them a lot of the credit. And the Alabama thing was just the Alabama game was awesome. The thing that stood out to me in that game I've thought about since then is you had the start from Janai.
Mm-hmm.
You had Chaney with a phenomenal first half. Like then all of a sudden it shifts. Then Chaney hits a bunch of buckets. Then you start the second half, it's Denver.
Yep.
Then it switches over. Oh, there's Tahad with a 3, and then a tough bucket on the right side and a tough bucket on the left side. Oh, and then there's Chad with a 3 and the go ahead. It was like spurts from different guys, and it was just that game was almost what makes Auburn so dangerous. It's like Janai can go on a little mini run, Chaney can go on a mini run, Tahad can go on a mini run, so can Denver, so can Chad, so can Miles, and it just it makes them a dangerous team. Obviously, they sit at 14 quad one wins. That's 6 clear of everybody else. Biggest regular season game in the history of the conference. 3 million people. It peaked at 3.5 million people on ESPN watching it. I think the average was 2.8. It's the most watched SEC game on ESPN in like 6 years. It's the most watched game. It's the most watched college basketball game on ESPN all season. I think the second most watched game in general. So all eyes were on it, man. And they stepped up and lived up the building. And by the way, so now all of that goes to what I want to know what you think. I keep telling people now, and I've said it like openly on Twitter, we are this close, if we're not already there, to the number 1 overall seed being wrapped up. And I know people are like, well, wait a minute. I'm just like, if you just look at what's out there and look at the analytics, assuming Auburn doesn't fall off the face of the earth,
right?
We're getting to a point where you're not going to catch them. Like, I mean, you're very, very close to it. Doesn't matter at all what happens in Nashville. Auburn doesn't even have to win out. Like, I personally think Auburn could hold serve at home, and it's done. Case closed. Number 1, that'll probably win them the conference. Worst case, a share. It's done. They could lose at Rupp. They could lose at College Station. It won't matter. They could still hang a banner, and they will be the number 1 overall seed. They could lose on Friday. That won't matter either. We're very close to it. Just nobody's going to be able to match their strength of schedule or their quality wins. Maybe not even come close. Like we're just really close to, like, before March hits, they're the number 1 overall seed.
No, I mean, I was going to say, I thought they needed to get a split on the road, hold serve at home, get a split on the road, and it is 100% locked up, regardless of what happens in Nashville. I could care less because there is some subjectivity with the seeding and the head-to-head loss to Duke. I'd rather not leave it to chance. But I'm with you. I think you could lose both on the road and still be the number 1 seed. I do believe you got to hold serve at home, though. I think those are important. You can't afford a loss to Georgia. That would hurt you. I think losing to Alabama in a rematch, I don't know how much that hurts you, but if you also lose both on the road, I think that also hurts you as well. So probably need to win 3 out of the next 5. Is that what it's looking at to you?
I think so, only because I don't know. Even if they lost their last 3, they could lose to Kentucky, A&M, and Bama. Ole Miss would be quad 1 at home, so that'd be 15.
Yep.
By the way, on this discussion, if you're an Auburn fan, root for North Carolina.
Yes.
Root for Mississippi State. Mississippi State, huge win over A&M. Root for Mississippi State. Root for North Carolina. You want Auburn to beat Georgia. You want Georgia to keep winning a few. And there was somebody, who else? LSU's probably not going to creep back into the 75.
No.
Memphis. Root for Memphis. Memphis,
Yes.
North Carolina, and Mississippi State are close. If they go on a losing streak, any of those, they could lose Auburn a quad 1 game. You want Mississippi, you want those 3 to keep winning, or Auburn could lose a quad 1 game and they didn't even do anything wrong. So just potentially, like, that is a potential of, if those 3 just collapse for some reason, all of a sudden you look up and Auburn loses 2 quad 1 games for no reason at all. Just tossing that out there. But what I was going to say was, the only thing Auburn's going to get to the point where if they beat Ole Miss, that's 15 right now.
Yeah.
Lose to A&M, Kentucky, and Bama. Let's just say they did it. They'd still be at 15 quad 1 wins. Everybody else is at 8 right now. Where are they going to make? I mean, I get Alabama. Alabama loses Missouri. Those teams are going to pick some up, but they're not going to win them all. Okay, so Bama or Kentucky or A&M get to 10, 11, even 3 quad one wins down the stretch. There's still 4 shy of Auburn. I think the only thing that could throw it up in the air would be if you don't win the conference. If you look up and go, okay, you won the most quad one games, but boy, you struggled down the stretch and you didn't even win your league. That's a place you don't want to be, I think, So that's why I say I think if you hold serve at home at this point, you're going to share, period, because you're going to give Bama a 4th loss if you hold serve at home. And then worst case, you lose the other 2. That only gets you to 3. Florida's at 3. So if Florida wins out, you share with Florida. But that means Florida winning out means they beat A&M and Alabama, both of those, which they could. But if Auburn holds serve at home, they will share the SEC championship, period, end of story. Then all you're doing is hoping Florida loses one, or if you go to Rupp or whatever and you win one. But hold serve at home, you're at 16 quad one wins, and you have a share, it's done. It's over. You're the number 1 seed. Period, end of story. Not even up for debate. And the Duke thing, yes, the head-to-head, but what's great about that for Auburn is how terrible the ACC is. That head-to-head, it was so close. Now, Duke crushed them fine, but it was such a close game that the ACC is a joke. I tweeted out the other day, and I had to look this up, and it's kind of mind-blowing. The best win for Duke in conference is SMU. Nope, sorry, Louisville. Louisville's the best one because it was a weird thing. They played Louisville, they didn't play. Louisville's their best. SMU is their second best ACC win. That's the equivalent of Auburn's win at Georgia. No disrespect to Georgia, but that's their second best win. Everything Auburn has left on the table, including Arkansas, Georgia, Ole Miss, Kentucky, A&M, Alabama, every one of those teams is higher rated than SMU. And Auburn has 8 conference wins better than SMU. So you could look up at the end, and if you just took Auburn and Duke's best conference wins and laid them out, you lay them out, you could lay out 14 teams. You'd just lay out the best 14. One of them would be Duke's, the others would be Auburn. Like, it's just so not even close to, like, Auburn has 8 wins better than Duke's second best conference win. Now it's 9 because Arkansas is better. Georgia now would be 10 better than their second best one. Beat Ole Miss, it'd be 11. You'd have 11 league wins better than their second best one. It's so out of whack that despite the head-to-head, I don't even know if they have more than 5 quad ones at this point, Duke.
No.
They're sitting here with I had it pulled up a second ago as I was looking at quad one production for these teams, but it's just so out of whack. So anyway, yeah, they have they're 5-3, dude. They played 8. They've played 8 quad ones. Auburn has 14 wins. Duke's only played 8.
Just it really is, when you think about what the SEC is and what Auburn's played in its non-conference schedule, because the non-conference was nuts in and of itself. But then you look at this league, and when I looked at the projection the other day, and I still think that's going to change some. I think it had literally 14 teams in the NCAA tournament the other day, and yeah, that's going to be high. I think it'll probably settle out at somewhere around 11, maybe 10. But I think the SEC is that kind of deep. And it kind of reminds you, like, I was coming of age at this time, but the way the Big East used to be, when you just had like Syracuse and Georgetown and UConn and St. John's, and everybody was just, it was a murderer's row night in, night out. And you had these great coaches that created good theater because you had, John Thompson and Jim Boeheim and Rolly Massimino and, PJ Carlissimo and Calhoun at UConn. Pitino was at Providence. And you have those same kinds of coaches that create that theater here. You just saw it last night between, Bruce and John Calipari. And then you think about Rick Barnes and you think about Todd Golden and all these other coaches that are layered into this conference and what they've created. And now Auburn has an opportunity against those coaches and these teams to go potentially 16-2, maybe 17-1. Maybe Auburn runs the table. What if they run the table and they go 17-1 in conference? And I don't want to put that kind of pressure on them by saying those kind of things, but I mean, is it impossible? No. Would I predict it? No. I think that Auburn probably has one more loss in conference coming just because that's the law of averages. But is it impossible for them to go just run the table the rest of the way? Absolutely not. They're capable of doing it. And to think about going 17-1 in this conference, can you think of a regular season basketball team? Because I can't talk about postseason yet. We're not there. We don't know what Auburn's going to accomplish in the postseason, but I can't think of a regular season team that has played the gauntlet that Auburn has played in any conference and come out on the other side at 17-1. That is just it's amazing to even contemplate, and the fact that it is even being discussed at this point to me is truly just mind-boggling. It really is. That's even a theoretical possibility this late in the season. So just hat tip to Bruce and what they've created here. And like you talked about, when you think about the depth of what Auburn has played against and how they stack up against the rest of the field, because that's what you're utilizing to determine if they're not going to be the number one seed or not. 6 more quad one wins than anybody else in the conference. Duke has only played 8 quad one wins the entire season.
Just take that in. Take Auburn's quad one wins. Take half of them, throw them in the garbage. Auburn has the second most quad one wins.
Yes.
But they're one shot. Take half of Auburn's quad one wins and act like they don't exist, and they still are only one behind what would be the lead in college basketball.
Right. And as you discussed, even in that Arkansas game, you found a way to win. You found a way to match their intensity when you had to. And that's what Auburn's done this year, is they've been consistent. And you talked about it before. Last year, it felt like every time there was a tight game or, a one possession game or something of that nature, Auburn found a way to kind of just fall apart in the end. I can think of at least maybe there was one game where they didn't, but the large majority, and there were a ton of toss-up games last year that came down to the final minutes, and Auburn just couldn't figure out a way to put it together. And this year is the complete opposite of that. And when it has become crunch time, Auburn has found a way to be mentally tough in those spots, rally the troops, and it's even internal. Like in the Arkansas game last night, Bruce walked away at one point, and Jason Williams commented on this, credit to him for picking that up, walked away from the huddle at one point and said, you guys figure it out. And Denver Jones took charge of the huddle at that point and said, guys, they are in this game because of us. Let's run our stuff, stop making mistakes, and put this team away. And that's exactly what they did from that point moving forward. So the best teams are they're coach inspired, but player led. And I think that is the epitome of what this team is.
Yeah, they got some. I mean, I think between Janai, Denver, Miles, Simo to some extent, Dylan certainly to some extent, they're all guys that have played a lot of basketball. And when they speak up, others listen. I mean, I just was looking at a USA Today story. If this guy's he wrote it after the Alabama game. If it's accurate, he's saying that the most quad one wins in a season is Kansas at 15. Actually, I need to look that up again because I need to see if that was regular season or if he was saying just season in general. But probably regular. I thought it was see if I can find that story again real quick. Anyway, it was by the way, Kansas one. What happened to them? Either way, I'm sure that we'll get something in the game notes here soon when they get there, but they're in the ballpark. I mean, they're certainly in the ballpark of not just the most quad one wins in a regular season history in college basketball. I think for a whole season, it's 20 because you start getting everything in the NCAA tournament could dang near be a quad one win. So I want to say for a whole season, it's somebody like Villanova or somebody that went to the Final Four and got close to 20. I think regular season, it might be that Kansas team from, I think it's at 22-23 at 15. Well, Auburn's at 14 if those guys don't, some don't fall back, and they've got the last 4 quad ones. Georgia's not. Then the last 4 games are
quad one.
Are quad ones. Real quick before we talk about Georgia and Ole Miss. Georgia Saturday, Ole Miss Wednesday in the last 2 games of this 3-game homestand, which comes at such a good time for Auburn to not travel, just to not have to worry about the travel, just to be at home. Alabama, Arkansas. Let's talk about Chad for just a second.
Sure.
He picks up the flagrant in the Alabama game, which I hated. I thought that was a phenomenal acting job from Chris Youngblood. And I really try to be fair. And I really watched that again. I'm like, Zach, 15. Okay. Zach says 15, Kansas, 22-23. That's a regular season. That's what I thought of it. Okay. So Auburn's could very well break the record for quad 1 wins in a regular season. Didn't like the flagrant Chad in the Bama game. But whatever. He's got a reputation, and I think it hurt him there. Didn't love it. Arkansas picks up the technical for talking to the Arkansas bench. I watched it happen. He did it a few minutes earlier, and I watched Calipari and their bench yell at the ref and say he's talking to us. And, I mean, it wasn't 5 minutes later.
Mm-hmm.
He did it again, and technically didn't say anything. He just kind of looked at him and pulled the jersey up, and they pitched a fit. And the refs aren't going to give him any leeway. I mean, to the point that I saw after that happened, Chad walked back to the sideline, was about to inbound the ball, and he was looking into the students of the Auburn, telling them he was cheering on his own student section. And I watched the ref go, stop it. And you're like, well, no, wait a minute. He can talk to his own fans. He can't stop that. But it was so his reputation's gotten to the point where they're just like, literally, don't do anything. Do you have any thoughts? I have some thoughts. Do you have any? Because I'm sure I didn't read everything that was said on our message board. I know the sense around Chad, and it's been a rough couple games. I mean, he's played well, 15 points, I think, in both games, but those sort of things are standing out too. And I know he's sort of a hot button issue at the moment.
He is a hot button. This is what I would say about Chad Baker-Mazara, and that is, yes, do you wish he were more mature in certain moments? And I do think you have to analyze Chad's situation on a case-by-case. Like, to make it a blanket is unfair to him, because I do agree with you on the Alabama game. I thought that was a call that could have been avoided. You know what I mean? Like you said, a good acting job and realistically young blood initiated, but is what it is. At this point, you take the good with the bad, and the good still outweighs the bad, in my opinion. Now, I do know that this coaching staff wants him to handle those moments a little bit better. I think you saw Corey come over to him immediately after he got that tech against Arkansas and said, don't say anything. You know what I mean? Like, you read his lips.
Yeah. Because they kind of got, even Janai was a little bit like, come on, dude, which you don't always see.
Yeah. Right. They have to get him to understand. Now, he's an emotional guy. He is an emotional player, and that's where a lot of his energy comes from. That's why he's able to make some of the plays that he makes, because of that attitude and demeanor. But in a big game, in the tournament, that can cost you if that happens at the wrong moment. And I think that's probably my feeling on that is, can you check yourself for the 6 games you have to play for it to matter, for you to wear a ring? Because that's what it comes down to. Can you, I mean, right now, regular season, yes, if it costs you a game, not the end of the world. It costs you a game in the tournament, like it did against Yale last year, and that's the end of your career, and that potentially cost your team a championship. And so I'll leave it with you to that. But again, great player. It's how he makes it, it's what makes him great sometimes, but it also can be his worst enemy. And I hope they'll continue to work with him on getting that in control.
Yeah. And I think about that Yale game, and I did the story with Chad and his dad last week, and he talked about it, and I got quotes from him, and he talked about how much that hurt him, and his dad was there, and he was embarrassed, and um, I would, yeah, I just, I may make a post on the corner about this. I would say for anybody that's listening,
Mm-hmm.
I would never tell you how to think or what to say or how to feel. If you want to be mad at Chad and you want to scream at him and say, stop acting like whatever, and like whatever, if you want to do all that and be hypercritical and
Sure.
go, you can. Um, I would say you're doing harm to the situation. If you want to do that, if you want to say, well, too bad, I got a voice, I got an opinion, and I'm going to voice it. I'm going to voice it on social media, and I'm going to voice it on the boards. I can't stop you. I would just say you're not just voicing it, like you're doing harm. Like I'm just going to tell you, like Chad reads, if his name is out there, he will probably read it.
Mm.
And so again, I'm not telling you what to say. I'm just understand, like, I get it. I wrote today in the recap from Arkansas. I literally said, frustrating. Like, I get it. Yeah, absolutely frustrating. I just think Chad is, I've been around him enough, been around the staff enough. His dad, by the way, is awesome. Like, if you met his dad, you'd be like, like his dad's super calm, chill.
Mm-hmm.
They're very different. But obviously Chad was not around his dad from 16 until like now, for the last 8 years, basically not around him. I think Chad just struggles with mightily, this is an understatement, with controlling his emotions. And I mean that to say, like, he really struggles with controlling it. He means well. He is not out there to hurt his team or whatever. I know it's easy to look at it and go, what a selfish guy. I get
Right.
it. I just think it's not always that. He's wired differently. And so he does some things, and you're like, and then you saw him throw his hands up after the Arkansas thing. Like, he genuinely was like, what did I do? So it's frustrating. I just think he's wired in a way that's not like you. If you see somebody, you'd go, what are you doing, dude? Like, what's going on in his head's not what's going on in your head. That's just what
Agreed.
I'm saying. So I'm not asked, like, it's just hard to relate to him. And so I would just say, I would say the staff is well aware of what they have in Chad. There are multiple staff members that are around him or in communication with him all the time, every day. There are people, whether it's not even primary staff, it could be other people. He has people around him a lot. They are well aware of, at any moment he could pop off. They are well aware of it. They know he could do it in an NCAA tournament game. They know that. It already happened, and it could happen again. But as of right now, certainly his value far outweighs.
Yes.
If you took away Chad's 15 points at Bama or 15 at Arkansas or some rebounds or the way he plays defense, this team is not the same team at all.
No.
With Chad Baker-Mazara, you can win a national championship. Without him,
I don't think so.
I won't say no, but you're a lot more difficult. So I'm not saying that to excuse. It's just a decision that they've made. He's valuable. We need him. That's what they're saying. We need him. And they're doing everything they can to come alongside him, to be there around him, to encourage him. And here's the other thing. The way he's wired, here's what I'll say. The way he's kind of wired, Bruce and them also have to walk a fine line. And I'm just telling you, it is what it is. The harder you are on him, the worse it will get. It will go the wrong direction. And so when people, again, I'm not telling you what to say, have opinions. But I'm saying, if you get out there on social media and bash the kid, or you get on the message board and bash the kid, that will do harm. That will do zero good. If he reads that stuff, it will go the other way. So I get people might go, well, too bad. I'm going to have an opinion. He needs to grow up. I get all that. I'm just saying, maybe we try to go, okay, Chad's wired differently. it is what it is. The staff is well aware. They're doing everything they can. They're trying to come alongside the kid. He's incredibly valuable. Let's just try to be positive. Let's just take him for what he is.
Yeah.
Frustrating. I get it. Totally get it. But I would just sort of caution people to just try to be positive. The way you saw Dylan in that game, Chad missed a 3 or something happened. There was a stoppage and Chad put his hands on his knees. I don't think you could see it on TV, but he's about half court. It's TV timeout. And Chad has hands on his head down, like kind of partially exhausted, partially like, God, I can't hit a shot. Dylan runs out to him, gives him a hug, like smiling, kind of like, you're good, man. Come on. And that's the other thing I would say, by the way. And I know this is just a very nuanced thing. And this was on my mind about Chad. The players, I know it's frustrating for fans to see the stuff Chad does. This is nothing new to the players, just so you know. Like, so the way you might react as a fan, the players see Chad every day. On the floor, in the locker room, on the bus, to a game, in the game. They're not fazed by Chad Baker Mazar.
No.
Like, Chad can act up into a fan. You're like, what in the world? The guy, I promise you, the players, if Chad has an outburst or Chad does something, the players are like, okay. It doesn't faze them. So that's, I guess, sort of a silver lining, is that he could hurt him by getting a technical, gives the other team 2 points. Yeah. But like, his antics the team is not like divided or discouraged or, oh my God, Chad's doing. They've just seen a lot of it. And so it just doesn't faze them in that way. Just so kind of people know. I don't know if that helps. But anyway, I just had some thoughts about it. And I just, people can say or do whatever. I just saw a little bit on the corner. I'm covering the game. I can't see everything.
Sure.
And I saw a lot of people being pretty hard on him. And I get it from the outside. You're going, dude, you're 25. Why are you? I get it. But I just think you got to understand he's wired a little bit differently, and it's just not quite as easy as going, grow up.
No.
It's just not. I promise you they're doing what they can behind the scenes to lead and encourage him and to support him. And I would just say to try to be positive, feel the way you want to feel, but I would just caution the rhetoric on social and on boards and bashing him and stuff. That for sure 100% will do more harm than good. That's all I'm going to say.
No, I think that's a valid point. And there are certain players that you talk about being wired differently, guys that need to do or say things to themselves to get themselves motivated, right? I mean, they need to feel like the villain sometimes. You have the Ron Artest or the Steven Jacksons of the world, players like that just, and again, I'm with you in the fact that I don't think anything he does is malicious. There's nothing that he does when he comes out there and it's like, yeah, man, I'm doing this because it's about me. No, he's getting himself motivated. He's getting himself fired up. He's in the moment. He's excited. There's a lot of different things that are going on through his mind at the time, and he's a competitor. And so part of that is competing and showing up your opponent and everything else, right? Like, it's just, there's a mental psyche to being an athlete, to being a competitor. And with some guys, it's a little bit different than others. And again, I'm with you that I'm not telling anybody to take it easy on Chad by any means. The coaches will hold him accountable. Okay. Like, those things are handled.
Yeah.
They
don't like let him get away with stuff. Like, I don't want to say like, they're not like, they get onto him. They do try to hold him accountable. But again, it's a fine line where if you get really, really harsh with him, it just is what it is. It'll go the other way. And then you're like, well, crap. Now we've done more harm than good.
Yeah. You treat everybody fairly, but you can't treat everybody equally, right? Every player is motivated and coached differently because that's what it takes to get the max results out of their talent. So Chad is one of those kind that you have to coach him a little bit different to get the best out of him. And there's nothing wrong with that either.
Yeah. And the secondary discussion, if you want to have a discussion about why does Bruce keep having him or KD or Flanagan, who is like that to some degree, or Ja'Kai, that's a secondary discussion you can have. You can go, okay, we've kind of had like a run now of like some dudes who are, even Dylan joked earlier in the season about we got some guys not right in the head, and it was kind of a funny joke. that's a secondary discussion you can have, and you can have it. You can go, hey, why do we keep bringing kids in that are like, we have to coddle, we have to like be psychologists with? And that's a perfectly fine conversation if you want to have it. I would just say that's sort of a different combo than this. If you want to say like, stop bringing in guys that are volatile, cool. You could have that. I would have plenty of opinions on that as well, but that's sort of a secondary conversation that's valid. If you're listening to us going, well, I just don't understand why he keeps bringing these guys. Totally hear you. That's like a different conversation. But just as it revolves around Chad, just he's not out there running rampant. They get who he is. They know what it is. And I promise you, they all lived Yale. We watched it. They lived it. I promise you that they have probably thought at some point in the last month, they've probably thought, if he might do it again. He might. I can't stop him. We're not out on the court.
No. Now, the difference is they're much more prepared, I think, with this team to lose him for a half than that previous team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, worst case.
Worst case, if that were to happen, I think they're prepared for that. And I think they have the talent to overcome that. Whereas last year, Chad was such a catalyst for them offensively to take him out, off the court. It just really kind of wrecked what they were trying to accomplish with some of the flex cut action and everything else.
Well, we'll see what happens. He's come off the bench the last three: Vanderbilt, Bama, Arkansas. I don't know for sure, but I could see him being back in the starting lineup against Georgia. Nothing positive on that, but he's played a bunch of minutes in all three of those games. He's just come off the bench. Said he was a little bit banged up, but he's played a lot of minutes. He's kind of looked lethargic a couple times. So, and I did watch him come out. He did tweak a little bit that left shoulder the day before the Bama game, and I watched him come out pregame and sort of do a little bit of that. So something was going on where he was kind of like just sort of feeling it out a little bit. But let's see if maybe he doesn't get back in the starting lineup, and who knows, maybe that can even settle him a little bit, because it really started the Oklahoma game. It really started the Oklahoma game with again, a pretty tough technical where he just sticks his tongue out, doesn't even say a word, gets that technical with Jeremiah Fears, gets 5 fouls. That's kind of where this started. And really since then, he's struggled to keep his emotions in check. Other teams are keying on it.
Yeah.
And it's, you just got to get it back in check a little bit. Okay. Quickly, let's just chat about the two games coming up. Georgia, Ole Miss. Obviously, Auburn's already beaten both. Auburn's already beaten both on the road. But that doesn't mean much in the SEC. Especially, if you want to look at it this way, I've always thought sort of a lot of times two teams play each other a second time. I always think the team that lost the first one has an advantage.
Yeah.
Because they generally probably did more things wrong. The team that won probably did more things right. And so you probably have more to fix or more that you can adjust. The team that wins is probably going to go, let's just do that again. And so sometimes it can even potentially be closer. Think about the Final Four run, Auburn, Kentucky, lost to them twice, really bad in Rupp. And then, of course, you beat them without Chuma. So you play Georgia, who that was a tight game to the final. That was a game Auburn probably should have won by like 8 or 9. Georgia hit a couple buckets in the last minute that made that incredibly uncomfortable. Remember, and then there was the weird call at the end. And all of a sudden, Georgia had a chance to win 70-68, but that game Auburn should have won by about 8 or 9. And that game got closer than it should have been. And then the game at Oxford, that's one of Auburn's best games of the year. I mean, 92 points on the road against a team that hadn't given up like more than like 70, 75 at home. So those are your two games coming up to try to get you win them both. You're at 26-2. You're at 14-1. Georgia's good defensively. Ole Miss is good defensively, a little bit more firepower on offense. I think Auburn's well equipped to beat them both. Heck, I even right now, Arkansas is as good as those two teams. But any thoughts on Georgia and Ole Miss? Again, Sean Padula, that'll be a big. That's at least one thing where Auburn can go, okay, we can fix that. That got out of control. We can maybe do some things different.
Yeah, he got his that night for sure.
Yeah.
Georgia and Ole Miss are kind of two teams that are going in very different directions right now. You're right. Georgia is a good defensive ball club. I think they were the first team that really extended ball pressure on Denver to kind of take him out of his game. So this will be a nice bounce back for him to see if he can adjust to what Mike White's going to want to do defensively. And, have a better performance because I think he struggled in that game pretty mightily. So that would be if I'm looking for somebody to have a different matchup. And Janai did not play in the first game. So there were some adjustments going on. You were coming off of where you blew out Mississippi State, and then you go into Georgia and you just don't shoot it the same way on the road that you do at home. So can Auburn get back to shooting it, 40+%, high 30% from three in this game? And can Denver hold up against their extended ball pressure? But this Georgia team, I never want to use the Q word because I hate labeling teams in that way or players in that way. But I don't know how much fight they've got left in them right now. They've just, they haven't looked great probably the last 2 weeks or so. And they are very borderline NCAA tournament. Ole Miss, by comparison, we talked about all the great coaches in this league, about 10 minutes ago. Chris Beard is another phenomenal coach in this league. He'll want this game. They're basically playing with house money because I think Ole Miss is close to clinching a spot or has clinched a spot in the NCAA tournament at this point. But this one is one for them that kind of gets them a different seed, right? If you can get a win over the number one team in the country in their place, that's the kind that can jump you a line. So they'll be very motivated coming into this game. They're a team that likes to turn you over. They're a good defensive ball club, but you're right about Sean Padula. I'll be interested to see how up Denver gets for that matchup because that'll be the person he's on to see, can you lock him down just a little bit? And if he's held in check, they've got some other weapons on that team. They do. But I don't know that they have a player that can get hot the way that he can. So that'll be an interesting battle there between those two. And again, what I'm interested really to see in these next two games is minus a little bit in the second half. Janai is finally looking to me like he's getting more healthy. I thought in this Arkansas game, even though the matchup wasn't great for him at times because they have some real bouncy bigs, he moved and was fluid in a way that I haven't seen with him except for in spots since his injury. But in this game and against Arkansas, he looked more natural than he has, or maybe he's just adjusted to some of the limitations that having that injured ankle that he's playing with, or kind of adjusted to what it's like to play in that way. So those are the things I'll be looking at is how does Janai continue to play, whether it's getting healthy or whether it's just being more used to the injury, and then how does Auburn play against two defensive ball clubs with extended ball pressure? Can they handle that, especially in their house, and shoot the ball cleanly in this game?
Yeah, it's a good point. I forgot Janai didn't play, and I do agree with you. He's looked a little more bouncy. I was looking yesterday, excuse me, prior to the Arkansas game, and I don't remember what – I know when he first came back, I know that he had a big wrap. You could see – the wrap under the ankle, under the sock. And I looked yesterday and it looked pretty normal. I didn't see a big old wrap or anything on that left ankle under the sock. Like it looked pretty normal. The Georgia game, I'm with you. You look back at that first game, Auburn hit 10 threes in that game, but that's the game. Auburn was 14 of 38 from 2-point. They missed 4 shots. And that's the game I remember post game. They talked about how many layups, how many close shots Auburn missed without Janai, but they missed a ton of close shots. 14 of 38 from 2 Auburn was in that game, and without Janai. But you're right about Georgia. You look at the efficiency numbers for them. If you look at T-Rank and you bring up their schedule, and so it gives you all these offensive and defensive numbers. And if it's green, it's good. If it's white, it's just average. And if it's red, it's bad. And it basically that's based on your team. So like if it's red, it's like that was one of your worst games, or if it's green, it was one of your better games. Georgia's known for their defense. And if you look, a lot of the first part of their season is a lot of green on defense, a lot of good stuff. And then starting literally, 1, 2, 3, about the Auburn game. All of a sudden, there's red efficiency numbers on defense, like littered in almost every game. Like it's just a clear. So they're not playing the caliber of defense they were when they played Auburn. When they played Auburn, they beat ranked Kentucky, and of course at the time Oklahoma was ranked. Like Georgia jumped into the rankings because they had beaten 2 ranked teams. Then they played Tennessee and lost on the road, and then they got Auburn. So like they rolled in there pretty confident. I mean, they rolled in there 2-2 in the league, having 2 ranked teams, and now it's a different story. They've lost 3 in a row, 4 of 5. And if you go even beyond that, they started 2-1, and since then they're obviously 2-8. So you're right about them struggling. I think Ole Miss will probably be more like Arkansas. Like their loss to Mississippi State hurt them a little bit, but they're still well in the tournament and all that good stuff. I think for them, they're just where can they get seeding wise? Get something like you get a win like Auburn. They're coming on. I mean, they're playing well. They had a little stretch right there of losing 3 in a row to Mississippi State, A&M, Missouri, beat Texas, lost to Auburn. But since they've won 3 out of 4. They beat Kentucky, LSU, South Carolina. So really, they beat Kentucky, but then they beat the 2 worst teams in the league and lost to State. They get Vanderbilt on the road this weekend, then at Auburn. So they'll be coming into Auburn having just gone to Nashville. We'll see how that game goes. So, I mean, it's a great opportunity for Auburn to pick these 2 up. I actually think that I'm less concerned about those 2 than I was Arkansas. But we'll see what I feel like, we'll see how things are going like into next Wednesday when that game against Ole Miss is. Either way, Auburn's sitting at 24-2. It's the second best. I tweeted it earlier. I need to find this. Just read this off before we go because it's just crazy. Auburn's 24-2 start matches the second best 26-game start in program history, behind 98-99. I think 98-99 through 26 games was 25-1. And then this is just when you get in BP. Of Auburn's 9 seasons with at least 24 victories all time, 9 with at least 24 all time, 6 of those 9 have come in the last 8 seasons.
Yep. I mean, it's Bruce Pearl and what he's accomplished at Auburn, Justin, you can't put into words, given what he took over to where this program is now.
Yeah. And they're 3 wins away. The regular season record for wins is 27. That was the Jabari and Walker team. They won 27 games. Auburn is sitting now at 24. And, basically with Everett, there's another team that was at 25. I'd have to go back and look. But, by the way, even that, if you go look at the top regular season wins in the history of the program, the top 7, 6 are BP teams. So anyway, they got a great chance. I mean, if you hold serve at home, you hit 27. You get one of the road wins, you get to 28. But if you hold serve at home, this team will be we'll tie the record for most regular season wins. So we'll see. They're fairly healthy, knock on wood. And play Georgia. That'll be I think it's at 3.
Yes, I think that's right.
3 o'clock, and then Ole Miss. I haven't looked that far ahead for what Ole Miss is, 6 or 8. Hopefully not 8. Those are terrible. And then we'll see. Look, we'll talk about Kentucky and A&M when they get here, but Kentucky's playing a little better defense. If they get healthy, Auburn. Those will be crazy hard games. A&M is a grind. A&M, I think, is fantastic. I know that Mississippi State beating them was surprising. I thought A&M was playing really well, but you just take them one game at a time. But Auburn's obviously 24-2, number 1 in the country, and rolling towards one of the best regular seasons, and not just Auburn history, not just SEC history.
No,
we're entering discussion of they're one of the best regular seasons in the history of college basketball, excluding, not talking about March, but just regular season. We're entering that discussion. All right, let's get out of here. We'll get you guys next week. We'll talk about Georgia. We'll talk about Ole Miss, and we'll preview Kentucky and A&M. Whew, what a road week that'll be. All right, for Alan, I'm Justin Hokanson. Subscribe at auburnlive.com. $1, I think, for it's $1 a week right now. So if you go annual, it's like $52. So go knock that out, and subscribe. Turn on notifications for YouTube, all that good stuff. And we'll see you guys around the corner and around the message board this weekend with basketball coverage, football recruiting is heating up, all that good stuff. We'll see you guys over on auburnlive.com. See ya.